All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to the Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Hope you had a great Halloween, and thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give party answering, and anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, I always get that party answering. If you'd also like it, there's a link in the description. And I see we have a bunch of you already hanging out. I see Brian, Still a Buster, Vishal, Danny, Lanswath, Stephen, and B. Mitchell, Lantern Tales, and Raphael, Fook, and Luke, and Antonio. And yeah, thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. Maran as well. And so the first question here, Brian says, the cars I saw this week were a Dodge Viper and a Shelby GT350. And man, the Shelby GT350 sounds so good. I know. Yeah, it's always fun to see one of those because, yeah, it's a fantastic sound. And yeah, it's a good spot. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I didn't really see anything too notable this week, honestly. So yeah, I don't really have any spots I remember that were that great, but glad you got some cool spots there. And Still Buster says his rare spot of the week was a white D Tommaso Pantera. Wow, such a rad looking car. Hope you and the channel are doing well. Thank you, I appreciate that. Still grinding away here on the channel, but that's awesome. You saw Pantera. That's a very rare car, and I don't know about many of you guys, but around here, you know, the car season is kind of starting to wind down, so we'll probably see a little less, but great spot. And Vishal says his spots of the week are a first-gen Dodge Neon in amazing condition, Buick Terraza, nice, Suzuki XL7, and a Plymouth Scamp. Wow, that's cool. Nice spots. And Lancelot says, good evening. I hope everyone had a good Halloween. I stayed in and watched movies all night. Sounds like a great way to spend it, especially if it's not super warm where you are. Then it's a great way to do it. And Steven says, well, if you had not heard the news yet, the 2026 Kia EV4 has been delayed for the US. Yes, I did hear that, which is kind of interesting because like they already had media doing stuff. I mean, they launched at the New York Auto Show, and then yeah, they just had media like a month or two ago do like walk arounds and stuff again. I said no to that because I was like, I already filmed it in New York back in April. Like, why do you need to have us do more coverage? I mean, others did it and got views on it, I guess, but just yeah, weird. Kia's been very weird with a lot of their stuff recently, like even just on the review side, like they'll do media drives like a month or two after a car's been on sale, and that might not sound like a big deal, you know, to the average buyer or whatever, but whenever you're talking about reviews, I mean, if you're not beating them, if you're not doing stuff before dealership people can do their videos, there's no point in going on a trip. I mean, these trips take so much time out of all of our schedules. And if we can just roll over to our local dealer and film it, then like, why wouldn't we just do that? And so Kia's been really behind with a lot of their stuff. And that's why I've said no to a lot of their trips in the past year or so, because it's just like, this thing's been out for months already. Like, why would I go on this trip? So the same thing with like why they went to all this trouble for EV4 and then they pull it. I mean, they must have known the tax credit was going to go away. I mean, you know, everyone was already saying that back in April. Everyone, you know, this was all stuff that shouldn't come as a surprise. So why they pull it at the last minute? I mean, I know they say delay, but I don't see any other reason why. And I also don't, I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys have other thoughts as far as why it got pulled, but like, to me, there's nothing else like it, really. I mean, you know, everything else is a crossover. You have the new Leaf, you have the Bold, which I guess is more of hatchback than crossover, but, you know, not a sedan. And I can't think of a single electric sedan that's under Model 3 unless they just didn't think they could undercut Model 3 enough. But even still, I mean, I think there would be people that would be interested if it's just not another NPC car, which is what all the Teslas are, because they're so common. One of the, you know, downsides of their success, but like, you know, if you wanted something a little different, you know, I don't know why, yeah, why they thought, like, why they didn't see this stuff coming, unless there's something else going on behind the scenes we're unaware of as far as why they pulled it. But yeah, and it might just be they couldn't get it cheap enough. But then why do you get all the way to the very end of the road and then stop it? You know, I don't know. I'd love to hear more about why that is someday. Maybe maybe I'll hear about it, maybe I won't, I don't know. But that's, yeah, it's unfortunate that they're bailing on that. But I honestly think too that you're going to probably see more of that. The companies that don't have a ton of market share already, that don't have a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum going already, um, they might say this is not the time to introduce this stuff in the States. We'll keep on introducing this stuff in the rest of the world. But if people in America are just not going to be quite as interested in this stuff, if it's a car that they can live without the volumes of sales in America that they're hoping on, then they may just say, forget it, for some of this stuff. And yeah, it's a shame because it's less choice and it's taking away, fun options that I think would be really great for people, that are looking for a commuter, looking for that kind of stuff. And thank you all for the support there and all the emojis. I appreciate it. But yeah, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, maybe we'll get more to the story here in the future. Who knows? And Lanswa, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate it. Happy to see a bunch of familiar faces there. Basically everyone, Antonia, Vancy, Darnell, Jazz, and Ryan, all able to get memberships. So thanks so much for your generosity, Lanswa. We all really appreciate it. And YH super chat, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I don't want to talk about, referring to, I'm assuming, the Blue Jays last night. Yeah, I tried to tune into a little bit of the game. I'm not subscribed to all the live sports stuff. So I tried watching like a bootleg thing that got taken down from YouTube like 10 minutes after it was up. But I watched a little bit of the game, then I was just following the score. But man, so close, extra innings and everything. I feel for the Blue Jays. They got so close. I mean, I'm happy for the Dodgers. I mean, they had a phenomenal team. It seems, again, I hadn't followed it too closely. But yeah, it's just, I always like to see someone else get it. Whenever teams win over and over and over again, it's just a little, I don't know. I guess from a viewer standpoint, it just seems like it's a little less exciting unless, it is your team, obviously. But other than that, it's like everyone else is like, oh, them again. Like I remember when the Yankees were constantly winning the World Series all the time, and it was just like, what's the point of even watching this? It was just like boring, So hopefully, maybe the Blue Jays take it next year. We'll see. But best of luck to them, and very fitting for this year for Canada with just getting screwed left and right. Sadly, it's not something to laugh about, but it's unfortunate, and that's why I was rooting for the Blue Jays. But yeah, hopefully next year's better luck. And let me see here. So let me see. Vishal says, also went for a walk in my neighborhood today and I got to hear the Escalade V cold start. It sounded amazing and loud. Nice. Yeah, you timed that well. Because they're quite the bark when you start those things up. I know even when we were on the Escalade V media drive, there was people at the hotel that were complaining because we had 20 of them or whatever lined up, and they all were cold starting one after the other, 7:30 in the morning or something. And there was some hotel patrons that were not happy about us being there, which was kind of funny. And let me see, Kevin, thanks for stopping by. Danny also says, the weirdest thing I saw was a base model, and I mean base model 90s Subaru Legacy weaving in and out of traffic in the New Jersey Turnpike. Very weird. Yeah, you never know what's going on in people's lives, whether it's a good reason or a bad reason or what. But I always try and think of it that way, like, who knows what they're going through or what the deal is. You'd like to think there's a good reason for all the crazy things we see out there, but it's hard to say. But glad you steered clear of it and didn't have to get tangled up in that. B Metro says, leading up to SEMA on Tuesday, Mopar released the Dodge Charger Hustle Pack track-only drag car powered by essentially a 5.7-liter Hellcat. It looks like they crammed it way down the engine bay. Sure, they'll make 50 at $235,000, and they're essentially hand-built spec race cars, but now they can't say we can't stuff a Hemi in the Charger. Yeah, I mean, true. With a race car, though, it's completely different because, race cars don't have to pass crash tests. They don't have to have, a lot of the other stuff that it's required. I mean, you could have even without dropping it down into the engine bay. I mean, you could put a giant blower hood on it, and if you don't care about pedestrian impact standards, like, you could have a Dominic Toretto blower sticking out of the top of it, and for a race car, like, yeah, it fits. I mean, but you could technically mount the engine on top of the hood if you really wanted to, and say, look, I was able to put a V8 in my Charger, like. So like race car is completely different. I mean, I think they're going to find a way to do it in a production car as well. Now, will it be that motor or a variation of that? I mean, downsizing it helps. They dropped half a liter. I'm not sure how much that's going to help, but if they're really, packing it hard, squeezing it into the engine bay there, then maybe the downsizing was kind of one of the workarounds, they needed to do. We'll see how Dodge fans take that, because if it's not bigger and better, they might still be fussing about it. But maybe that'll, at least just having a supercharged V8 in that thing will be enough for people, even if all the old Challengers and Chargers can boast about having a 6.2 liter supercharged Hellcat. But yeah, I think race cars, you can't base race car builds. That doesn't really have any basis in production stuff typically. Sometimes, you test stuff for production, obviously, and things like that. But like, to me, that doesn't give me any I mean, obviously, again, they're working on this stuff, but I mean, they've had all kinds of crazy stuff that we've never seen. They've had, the Hellcat motor, even back in the heyday, of the Hellcats and stuff. The Hellcat never made it into a production car. Everyone was expecting it to come in, 1,000 horsepower, Hellcat motor, basically. That never happened. And we've seen a bunch of crazy stuff. Even there's a 1,000 horsepower version of the Hurricane motor already that I think rolled out like a year or so ago. So that was another race car, crazy power. We never saw anything like that, at least yet. So I'm still, gonna wait and see. But yeah, I mean, and so I think that's the thing is, it's never been a matter of will it fit. It was always, in my mind, at least, a matter of will it fit and meet all the things it needs to meet for crash testing, for pedestrian impact, for, weight bias, so it doesn't handle like complete garbage. All these considerations you don't have to worry about, especially a drag car. If the weight balance is completely whack, doesn't matter. Whereas, yeah, you can say it doesn't matter in a production car, but there's only so much you can get away with before it's like unsafe and stuff these days. So there's a whole lot of other extra stuff that goes into it. So to me, like, you can't really point at that and say, aha, see, like, now you can do it. Like, I still think there's a lot of hurdles they need to clear, and I'm sure they will clear them. I have no doubts we'll see a V8. Will it be that extent? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And let me see. Also, we have Sean. Thanks so much for being a member for 40 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, my find was a 50s Pontiac Chieftain sedan on the 210 East towards Highland, California. Don't get too excited. It was pretty beat up and running rough. Well, hey, it's still out on the road. And to me, that's a win. It's not rotting in a field somewhere. It's not being, mothballed in some garage or barn. Like, it's out on the road, enjoying, being driven and all that. And that makes me happy. Even if it's rough and beat up, it's on the road. And that, to me, that's a win. And someone able to enjoy it. I'm a firm believer, even if your car is not perfect or whatever, as far as plastics and restorations goes, like, if it's a car you can work on and also still drive it and enjoy it, and do incremental improvements and fix it along the way, I think that's a really fun way to kind of get a little bit of a taste of what you're working towards, without needing to have a complete fantastic restoration and have all this time. It's kind of fun to have stuff out there driving around. And in great spot too. I don't see those too often, even at car shows. I feel like I saw them more a while back, a decade or so ago, but I feel like I don't see them as often anymore. And some of those old Pontiacs are some of the coolest 50s cars, in my opinion, with the illuminated, like Indian Chief heads that they had on there, and all the other little old-fashioned, jet age things they blended with, the kind of Native American kind of things and things like that. It was, I don't know, to me, it was kind of cool looking back on it. I mean, obviously probably be a little bit problematic these days, but, I've always liked the old Pontiac from the 50s. And let me see. So Lantern Tail says, I saw a green Ford Contour on my way to Walmart this week. That's a rare spot for sure. Yeah, I'd never see Contours either. I think we talked about this not too long ago. That everyone else basically hasn't seen Contours too often, but that's awesome you saw, and that's cool. And Danny says the coolest Ford I saw this week was a Saline SSC. Wow, nice. And B Mitchell might appreciate this one. It was just out driving around in New Jersey. It was bone stock. Here's a weird car fact. Did you know in 1981 you could get the Nissan Maxima, the Datsun A10 Maxima with a diesel, 90 horsepower, and not known torque, but 5-speed stick or 3-speed auto are the transmission options. Neat. That is cool. Yeah, that's. I didn't even realize that Maxima went that far back. Honestly, I didn't recall. For me, I remember all the Maximas like late 80s, like 89, 88, something like that, is like the first generation. But I guess, yeah, I missed it whenever they rebranded the Datsun into the Maxima. That's crazy. And Danny says, I Googled this sportiest Hyundai model in 2016. What did it spit out? The 16 Veloster R-Spec and the Sonata Sport 2.0T. Yep. Yeah, that was pretty much. I mean, I would argue, actually, if we're talking sportiest Hyundai, I'd probably say the Hyundai Genesis Coupe would be. I think those are still around in 2016. That would probably be the way I would vote as far as sportiest Hyundai in that era. But let me see. Folk, I appreciate the emoji usage. And Lance Moss says, I still think Ford is really missing the ball by not having an SVO trim on the Mustang. I totally agree. And the RTR would have been the perfect thing to do it. And instead they want to do this new thing, which, I mean, I guess they just, I don't know. To me, that would make sense, though, because the 80s and 90s is like what people are nostalgic for now. And the people that, I mean, because the RTR thing, I have so many thoughts on as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that. It came out. It's still the same powertrain. Nothing really new there. Aside from having anti-lag, they bothered to put that in, but then not even do 5 more horsepower on the tune for some reason. But I don't see anyone saying, you know what, I'm going to spend 50 grand on an EcoBoost Mustang when, yes, by the sticker price, new versus new, you still have to pay probably 7 grand more or something for an actual, GT with a V8. But there's the used market. And I think some car companies maybe sometimes are in echo chambers where they don't really think about the used market. They're like, well, if you're buying new, like, this is great. And it's like, yes, if someone, for some reason, it was illegal to buy used cars, like, they would say, okay, yes, I'm saving money and I'm getting cool parts off the dark horse. I guess I will pay 50 grand for an EcoBoost Mustang. But like, anyone with a brain is just going to go and buy a 1-year-old GT Mustang for 40 some $1,000 and have at least the same price or less than whatever this RTR is going to cost, and have, way faster, better car. So like, I don't know. I think that RTR thing is very misguided. And I think an SVO trim, even if it was the same exact thing, but with SVO trim, at least you got the little bit of nostalgia, then you could kind of have the fun angle of that. And I think that does sell cars. It might not sell a huge amount of them, but like the Bullet was essentially a performance pack level 1 with unique paint and wheels and trim. And I fully knew that, and it was enough for me, and I was excited about it, and I bought it. And so did thousands of other people. I think SVO, you could have done the same thing. You say, okay, look, like, this isn't going to be super popular, but we'll, build 2,000 of them a year, make them limited edition or whatever you have to. Call it SVO, give it some fun 80s graphics, a fun, different, seat pattern on the inside or something, little things, dress it up, and then it's fun. And then I think you cash in on the Gen X nostalgia for, the 80s and 90s, I guess even, millennials, and you get a lot of those people who now have the money, who want a sporty car, that aren't so old and worn out that they don't want to get into a low Mustang, which I think is what we're starting to run into with all the boomers that were typically the ones that were the Mustang was marketed to. They're aging out of them, and even I still follow the Mustang Facebook pages or the Bullet Facebook pages. And there's a lot of these older guys that are selling off their Bullets here, the 2019s even, and getting into stuff that's more comfy and relaxed and all that. So, I mean, I feel like the RTR is going a little bit too far the other way because the RTR assumes that like the average 20 something, maybe early 30 somethings that are into RTR potentially, that they have 50 grand to spend on a Mustang, which I think is misguided as well. If you're reading the room these days, I don't think that's a realistic expectation. When most people my age are complaining about how they can't even afford a house and they're going to go and buy a 50 grand Mustang. So I don't know. It seems kind of weird, but I totally agree with you, Lancewoth. SVO would at least be some way to cash in, and make the four cylinder a little bit more cool. I mean, I enjoyed my EcoBoost. They are great cars still at the right price, but they're just too expensive these days. And Luke says, I'm visiting some friends in Tennessee this weekend. My rental car is a Malibu, which is really oddly equipped. Heated seats, panoramic roof, but no blind spot monitor or adaptive cruise. Yeah, so Chevy is kind of weird with how they used to do the packaging. They've mostly fixed this, I think. But yeah, that is because blind spot and adaptive cruise would be bundled into a safety package. Might even be a level 1, level 2 safety package. Actually, I think the basic one kind of gets you the blind spot monitoring, and then the higher one gets you adaptive cruise. Adaptive cruise for a long time with Chevy was also just a standalone option. That was also an expensive option typically. So very easy to see that a rental car, you'd have people complaining maybe about not having heated seats. Even that though, I don't know. But I think it's just one of those builds where the rental agency was like, oh, we don't need all this other crap on it, especially because if rental cars are getting dinged up all the time. Having adaptive cruise or the ability to not have it is a very nice, perk. And I think that's maybe why a lot of times rental cars, the companies just kind of buy excess inventory too. So they might not have even chosen that. But yeah, that was a possible combination that a lot of people got with GM vehicles just the past few years here. And I hope you have a great time in Tennessee there with your friends. And that's awesome. I'll be in Tennessee here later this month as well. And let me see here. Jordan, thanks so much for being a member for 25 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, hey, Matt, Walmart is a corporate giant. Do you see them partnering with Hertz for rental vehicles or another company for automated delivery vehicles? I think the automated delivery thing, obviously, they're interested in. I'm assuming they will just go the route that everyone else goes of either, choosing a Waymo or something like that. As far as rental vehicles, I don't know what that industry is like right now as far as demand and stuff. I'm sure, I mean, there's so many independent, rental agencies. I don't feel like that's something where Walmart would need to partner up on. I think the things that, would be more valuable to Walmart are things where they are bringing in customers that are going to buy stuff, versus rental. There's not that many people that show up at a rental car place every day. But like the one big thing that Walmart is getting in, and they just said earlier this year, they're investing a ton of money in, is EV chargers. Because it still is, there's been some stuff I've seen in the past week or two that some convenience store chains are saying that they aren't getting the payoff that they were hoping to get from their EV chargers and their installation. But then there's others like Walmart who their leadership is super excited about putting in a ton of EV chargers. And this was this year. This was not the past few years, to pay lip service or something like this. They're like, hey, look, like we love these customers because, they say, hey, look, I'm going to sit here for half an hour anyway, but go in and grab a few things or, incorporate it into their grocery routine every week or whatever the case might be. But like Walmart has a ton of excitement for installing EV chargers. And they've been doing a bunch of installs this year. I haven't been following along with it, but this was like, they said, yes, we know that the federal incentives are going away. We know about all this stuff, and we're still choosing to do this because we think it's a good business opportunity and good for Walmart. And so I think that's the only new business I've seen that they're kind of getting into. And yeah, I think rental stuff is a very tricky business. And I don't think anyone really envies, getting into that or trying to expand that. I think that's kind of a whole different beast and very hard to crack. So they're just probably leave it to the companies that have typically figured it out more or less and then let them do it instead. But great question. Thanks so much, Jordan, for stopping by. I hope you're doing well. And Ford Enthusiast, thanks so much for being over for 13 months now. He says, hey, Matt, I hope all is well. So do you think hybrids will become more popular now, or do you think EVs will still remain a popular choice? I mean, I think that you're going to see the um, the consumer behavior that we've seen in the past few years will continue. And so what that was hybrids have a huge growth potential, and they've been growing very quickly, and they will continue to grow. And you're going to see, I mean, just the fact that RAV4 is forcing everyone into hybrid for this new generation, I mean, that alone is going to boost the numbers as far as hybrid take rates are huge this year. And it's like, just because people are buying RAV4s. And by extension they have to, it's a hybrid, and so it's going to boost that. But every time I'm at a car company's first drive, and they're talking about if there's a hybrid version of something or whatever, they're talking about hybrid adoption. Like, it is very much still going to be a thing, and was always going to be a thing. I think Toyota was smart to realize that not everyone was going to just jump over to the EV side. Apparently that was hard to decipher, because a lot of these other companies are acting like they truly had no idea that people wouldn't just immediately jump into an EV, that we needed to have these gateway vehicles and these baby steps. And I'm not sure, why companies didn't foresee this stuff, but you can go back and watch my weekly updates from 5 years ago. I was saying this kind of stuff. Like, it's not hard to imagine that, like, there's just going to be a lot of people that it doesn't work for their lifestyle. You do not have, if you don't have home charging, it's just more of a pain in the butt than it's worth most of the time for most people, unless every single Sunday night you go to Walmart and charge while you do your grocery shopping. If you have a very rigid schedule and you know exactly how many miles you're going to drive every week, and you have very little variance there, then I've talked, I mean, there's people here on the live stream, even in the past, I've said, yeah, I live in an apartment and I have an EV, and I go to the fast charger and it's fine. But like, with fast chargers being so expensive, I don't recommend it. If you can't charge at home or at work for very little or for free, especially at work, is the real ideal way to do it. But if you can't charge in one of those two places, don't get an EV. I mean, I've said that for years. It's not worth the trouble. You're better off just getting a hybrid. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be in that situation, and that's going to also hold back plug-in hybrids. But I think plug-in hybrids also play an important role in that, of people who say, I can charge at home, but I do need to drive 500 miles in a day every once in a while, or I'm too freaked out by the limitations of EVs, or whatever the case is. Everyone's got their own mental makeup, that their own comfort levels and stuff. And so I think the plug-in hybrid is great for that. And I was actually even talking to someone about this recently, another journalist, about the Ram charger, whatever, the Ram Rev, I think it's called now. And he was like, this is dumb, they should just have done the electric one, because otherwise you have this Ram that has a battery pack with 130 150 miles, whatever it is, of range, and you're just towing around a Pentastar V6 that's not doing anything. And then whenever you do fire it up, it's horribly inefficient, because then it's dragging around a big battery pack. And it's like in their mind, it was like the worst of both worlds. And I'm like, yes, but like, the point of that truck isn't to be efficient. It's to, one, I think, be a gateway drug to people, to say, hey, look, like, I actually don't need 1,000 miles of electric range to feel comfortable. And hey, I'm never actually using this gas engine. What a waste. Next time I'll just get the electric version. Or, just people who, do actually do a ton of towing, where they do need to have that gas backup. And, sure, they might lose a little bit of efficiency there whenever the gas engine kicks in. But, for the lion's share of their other driving, again, the plug-in hybrid will save them, So I think it's, these are all things that are worthwhile. And that's why, again, ever since the Prime stuff came out from Toyota, I've been shouting from the rooftops, this is the way to do it. And I love that Toyota is committed to that. And they are still rolling out, all of these great EVs, which I know some other people in the industry think is crazy right now. Like, why did they not kill all of these EVs the way, Kia is delaying the EV4? But I think it's that, Toyota understands there are people that do want EVs. And, I think BZ, actually, this refresh BZ, supposedly early reports are that it's actually selling very well, and they didn't even put incentives on it. It's just like, it's improved, and some people really like it. I mean, the pricing's decent, as well. So I think, they see like this has a role to play. It's not going to be, taking over and eating RAV4's lunch anytime soon, but it's an important thing to start off and keep it going, and eventually it'll grow little by little. And if you look at the big picture and you're not just focused on this year and you zoom out, the overall trend is still electrification. The rest of the world's electrifying and fast. And so it's going to get to a point where they can't afford to just make a bunch of gas guzzlers for America and then have everything else be EV. It just you have to build world cars for many of these global companies. And so it's going to be something where that's going to get to a point where it's like, okay, like we've had these old gas things that have been carryovers for so long. We can only keep this going for so long before we got to just pull a plug on that stuff. So I think that we're still going to see that all kind of eventually come to a head, and so this is why like I think the Ram strategy, it's good they have the Ram Charger, but them like bringing back the V8s and stuff, it's clearly they understand they're doing the cash grab while I can get it, but it's not the way of the future. The way of the future is not V8s, it's not gas guzzlers, it's electrified. And whether what the mix is as far as hybrid, plug-in hybrid EV, I don't think is super relevant. It's just that's the direction we're headed, and so I think all those three will contribute. But I think EVs, you will still see growth. I think you're going to see a big drop off because everyone accelerated their purchase because they knew the tax credits were ending. So anyone who was aware of this and was ready to make a purchase made it by September 30th. And so you're going to see like anything else, I just bought my iPhone last month because the new iPhone came out. I got my phone. Guess what? I'm not buying another phone for another 2 years or more. Same thing with EVs. Everyone bought their EV and they rushed out and bought them. You're not going to have very many people trickling in now and saying, hey, I'd like to pay $7,500 more for my EV, please. So you're going to see no one's going to buy EVs for the rest of the year. But I think, we're not going to see the true picture of what a post-incentivized EV sales year looks like until beginning of next year, assuming everything else is stable in the world, which who knows. But like if it's a relatively normal year, I think that next year we can kind of take a step back and at the end of 2026 say, okay, well, here's actually what demand is like for these things whenever they're not incentivized. And we've seen some companies have big discounts already, like Hyundai already. They're they just knocked like $8,000 off the Ioniq 5. So there's some where they're like, hey, we're just going to eat it. Then there's others, or maybe they're not going to be able to eat it, and they'll just take the hit on the sales front instead and just sell less of them. But I think it's I think it's still going to grow. And again, big picture, long term, we're still heading in that direction for sure. And Linda, thanks so much for the super chat. She says, I would love a hybrid Mustang. I think that, again, a lot of people are more open to hybrids. And I think especially if like they pulled an E-Ray with it and they made an electrified front end that, enhanced performance as well. And that was always the plan. I mean, this kind of got leaked out back in the late 2010s. They confirmed a hybrid Mustang was coming. And the idea was, an electrified front axle. You get the all-wheel drive, which Mustang fans would really be excited about. You have some extra efficiency, some extra power, and it sounded like a great idea. I don't know why it never happened, but especially because for a while there we're in this electrified age. Like I don't, it seems like they canceled it before. They probably must have canceled it back in 2021, 2022 or something. And I have no idea why. And I don't know why they didn't launch it for the next generation. I would have to assume it's going to come at some point, especially this year. Ford's really got to have a real look in the mirror and say, okay, Mustang sales are terrible. They've plummeted. This is the worst year on record for Mustang. And it's even a big drop off from last year, which last year was the worst year ever for the Mustang. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And it's like, okay, well, where do you go from here? Because you're on thin ice at this point. Like you have, it's going to eventually just shrivel up to nothing if you do nothing about it. So it's like, are you just going to take the L and say the Mach-E is the new Mustang and then just leave it at that? Or are you going to do something? And if you're going to do something, then, you're going to do the four-door thing because, there's rumors of that still coming, and is that going to be the only version of the Mustang? Kind of like how we saw a Jeep Wrangler for a long time. It was like only a two-door. That's what Jeep Wrangler always was a two-door little thing. And then the four-door version got introduced, and then everyone's like, yeah, this is much better. Sales, took off, and they were off to the races after that. And now hardly anyone buys a two-door. I think that's the most likely path for Mustang is, they'll say, hey, look, we'll have the two-door and the four-door. Everyone will go out and actually buy the four-door. And then after a while, they'll be like, oh, well, it's kind of hard to keep this two-door around, and then maybe kill it off someday. Or just, it'll just be a shadow of itself because no one will actually want to buy it anymore. I think that's most likely what you'll see for Mustang. But I think that other things like, adding a hybridized thing with the electric front end, give it all-wheel drive. And I think especially these days, that's more important with competing with Charger, since Charger now has all-wheel drive, doesn't have the hybrid thing, but you have the all-wheel drive component. I think like Dodge is expecting to really conquest nicely in the snow belt with Charger now having all-wheel drive. So we'll see if it actually pans out that way or not. But it makes a lot of sense. They added the extra practicality of the big hatch. Again, everyone loves to hate Dodge, but I think they played that car perfectly. And hopefully the gas version allows more people to kind of cash in on that. That you have this giant hatch, you can bring home the big screen TV in and do all the lifestyle stuff with it still if you want. You have the all-wheel drive, so there's no compromise there. You have the option for a four-door or the two-door. They both look great either way. I think that's really the smart. I think Dodge did it perfectly. I think Ford, if they're smart, will just copy all of that. And I'm sure skip the electric component, but as far as just at least the body styles and all that, like, S650 was a huge missed opportunity in general. It should have been a Fox body redo and, giving it a hatch and just, because if they're not interested in doing any of the heritage stuff, if they're doing RTR instead of SVO, and if they're going to do, some other probably V8 RTR instead of a Bullet or instead of Mach 1, if they're just going to get rid of the 60s, vibe, then just go the full way and quit making the car look like a 60s muscle car anymore, and just, have it be a completely different boxy shape and just commit to it if that's what you want to do, but I don't know. Yeah, the whole Ford corporate culture is very weird right now over there. So I don't know who's making these decisions. Jim Farley said some weird stuff in the past couple of years too, as far as, we'll never make an electric Mustang, and completely ignoring the Mach-E and everything else. So there's a whole lot of stuff there to unpack. But and I see Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He's rooting for the Ford Lithium, which was the electric Mustang with a manual transmission, a real manual that they showed off at SEMA several years ago. And I'd love to see that someday. We'll see. I know there's other companies like Toyota, they have they actually just built this again. There was a Torino A86, like an actual 80s one, that they put an electric powertrain in with a real manual transmission, or it's still simulated, but it will actually stall and you can slip it, and it's like everything. Because I think there's actually a clutch. I don't know if it's an actual clutch or not, but like it's very realistic. Pushing Pistons on Instagram did a really cool little feature on it, but others are doing that. I don't see why Ford couldn't either, but again, it just seems like they're not wanting to make good decisions recently. But let me see. And thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat. Anyway, getting off my soapbox here. Let's answer some more questions. So where were we? I see Danny says, drove yesterday and today, going to enjoy my fall break from school. My rear spots were a 2010 Acura TSX V6, 2008 Equinox Sport, and a 2009 Saturn Astra XR 3-door. Very nice. Cool spots there, especially that Astra. I never see those. They vanished. I would see them back when they were new. I'd see them fairly often, and then they just all evaporated. And I don't know why, because they're not like that unreliable from my understanding, but I don't know what happened. Let me see. So, B. Mitchell's talking about the SSC. And Maran says, hey, Matt, did a lot of highway driving this week and had a lot of fun. That's awesome. Glad you're enjoying the drives. And Dave says hi from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for stopping by, David. And Hamburger says Matt is my favorite AI YouTuber. Yes, someday it probably will be AI. Who knows? But for now, it's the real me. I promise. Because I don't think you could program AI to be as ranty as I am. And Linda, thanks for stopping by as well. And Vishal says GM's top software leader left the company. Do you think we can see a possible backtrack of the CarPlay elimination? I hadn't heard that. Was that something that happened just this week? Because it seems like, for whatever reason, these comments that they said on this podcast are really having more of a fallout than all the gnashing of teeth that happened back whenever they first announced it on the EVs. I don't know. I guess it's just the extra dynamite of gas people who really don't like change. Now you tell them, oh, you also can't have the infotainment system you want. Maybe that's part of what's adding extra volume to the rage that's rattling GM a little bit. I don't know. But if it happened in the past week or so with that software leader leaving, then maybe we do have some hope. I don't know. I mean, so I was on the Optic V drive this week. You'll see that video here this coming week. And yeah, it's I told the GM people, I'm like, look, like it's still is just a deal breaker for some of this stuff. And I was even talking to the one the top PR person, and they're saying, oh, how do you like your lyric, and talking about that, and that's also gave me a nice leg up, because it's like, look, like I'm a fan of the brand, like we literally put our money where our mouth is, and releasing the lyric and stuff, so like we love it. But I'm like, yeah, like I was like, we might have gone for Optic, as I've told many of you guys as well. We might have actually gone for Optic, and the PR person was saying how like she really loves the Optic, and it's one of her favorites in the lineup and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I love Optic. And like, if it had CarPlay, it probably would have been the way we would have went. So like, I let them have it. I told them, and even I was talking to someone who does the Dolby Atmos in the Optic, which they're very proud of, and you'll see in the video. But I mean, it's very impressive the way they set it up. But anyway, like with that too, like I was like, it's great you have Dolby Atmos, but like it only works with Amazon Music and Tidal, I think, and like as an Apple user, I can't enjoy that unless I subscribe to these audio services. I can't enjoy it just with my music collection that I have. Many of these songs that I do buy, or newer songs that have been mastered in Dolby Atmos, and I can't access that because I'm stuck in the dark ages doing Bluetooth audio streaming like it's 2015. And so I told him this stuff, and yeah, so I am a little optimistic, hearing that news, and hearing some of the conversations that I had. I don't know. I still think they're very committed to it. I don't think anything I said, made any difference, obviously, but like, I think that there are things where they understand there's some deficiencies. And I think that's the first time I've heard them kind of recognize that on this program. I've just been like, whenever I was like, look, like I can't listen to my Apple Music. I can't do this, that, or the other. Like, there are those types of things, and there's no rebuttal for that. It's just like, yeah, like if you're not willing to flex to another music streamer, you're out of luck. And that's, just the way it is. And so I hope that, again, they make some changes and adjustments, and I don't know, but I mean, I hope that if this is actually rattling them, it shows that, the people do have a little bit of power still to affect stuff. But I mean, even this wasn't discussed really at the Cadillac program, but like, it's funny that I believe the top selling Ultium model, I don't know if it's just because of the lease deals or what, but the top selling Ultium model is the Honda Prologue. And that's the one with CarPlay. Same thing. I think ZDX for a while they ran out of stock of ZDX pretty quick. So it's not the case anymore. But for a while there, I think ZDX early on was actually doing a little bit better than not Lyric, because Lyric's got CarPlay too, but ZDX was doing better than like Blazer and all those others. Like the ones with CarPlay have been the ones that have done fantastically well with sales, and they're going to figure this out too, because like Lyric, I believe, is dropping CarPlay for 26. I keep hearing back and forth different things, but I'm pretty sure it's dropping it for 26, and I'm very curious if we'll see Lyric sales drop off a cliff, because Lyric has been their number one seller, and the apple of their eye because it's just this sales champion for them. But it's because of the CarPlay, I think. And they drop that, I think you're going to see, oh, wow, like lyrics dropping off. They might, try and blame it on, oh, we got to do a refresh or, something like that. But like, I think it'll just be CarPlay. And I think that's why Prologue's doing, has done so well because people really like the GM platform. I love it too. It's really great. And I love it in the lyric, but like, it's just people really do want CarPlay. And I don't think GM fully appreciates how many sales they'll lose out on with that. And yeah, it's interesting, but anyway, yeah, I hadn't heard about that software leader leaving. That gives me hope. So thanks for letting me know, Vishal. And Raphael says, no sightings this week, but I got to drive a new Supra. Excellent car. I just don't have the money. Well, I'm glad you got to try one out. That's fun. And yeah, Supras are great. And Lantern Tail says, I think the Daewoo Nibira ended up in the junkyard as parts availability is probably non-existent. If you go to an AutoZone and ask for Daewoo parts, the staff probably don't even know what the brand is. Yeah. So referring to the junkyard walk that I posted here about a week ago or so. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's probably part of the reason. I feel like there's got to be some parts that you could either import or stuff that's universal kind of stuff where it's not unique to Daewoo, but you're probably right. I'm sure that's part of why they're hard to keep on the road. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully going to another junkyard here this week and filming again. Those videos are doing really well. I'm very happy. I mean, like the one I posted this last week is up to almost 10,000 views, which is actually, that means it's performing better than even like that cool Golf R that I posted this week. And I posted that a few days later, so not quite an even comparison, but like, it looks like, that's not even on track to do as well as the junkyard walk. So we'll see. I mean, I'm just going to follow the views and see where it goes. But like, if the junkyard stuff continues to do well and continues to grow, there's a very real chance that I'll probably drop down to less reviews on this channel. I'll still do reviews, but just, maybe not 2 a week. It'll maybe just be 1 a week or something and just go more into the junkyard stuff if that's, the stuff that people want to see. And I think the stuff that's more relatable and maybe even possibly helpful to some people searching for parts and stuff. But I think that, again, with people getting out of the new car market here and less people finding that relatable at all to car shop, I think the junkyard is I'm very excited for the future of that channel. And I'm glad that you're enjoying it, Lantern Tales, and I'm glad that many others are enjoying it as well. And the algorithm seems to be figuring out how to push that properly to people and stuff. And it's crazy though, which also shows final thing I'll say and I'll move on. Prime example of how subscribers, as far as the amount of subscribers, does not matter anymore. I mean, again, I know all of you that are in here tonight, the 60 of you that are hanging out with me on a Sunday evening, I know you are real people who actually enjoy this channel, who actually support probably almost everything I post and all that, and I very much appreciate it. But like, I have 1,000 subscribers on the Junkyard channel, and I'm getting the same or more views than 457,000 subscribers on this channel. It's just... It's kind of wild how YouTube completely invalidated subscribers and just, it doesn't, nobody actually sees these videos anymore. No one even knows I'm doing these lives. Most of these, 500,000 people almost have no clue about any of this. It's like completely, YouTube just buries it. It's just wild how the algorithm is that powerful. And so that's why I'm getting better views with 1,000 subscribers on a new channel than 457 times that on this channel. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad I tried out that channel, and I'm glad that hopefully it has a bright future. Let me see. Danny says, unfortunately, I'm dealing with post-nasal drip. I sound like I'm dying when I cough, and I sound horrible, and my throat is extremely scratchy. Dealing with it. Well, sorry to hear that. And I guess, yeah, fall time, that kind of stuff's starting to pick back up. I know my daughter had a cold a few weeks ago. I was really keeping my fingers crossed that I wouldn't get sick because I was doing all these trips last month, and thankfully I was able to avoid it. So very thankful for that, but I hope you feel better soon. Steven says, I'm just wondering if the same thing will happen with the EV3. I hope not. EV3, I think, has a little bit of a better chance just being a crossover, but Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible they'll just, quit that as well. So we'll see what happens. I think it's also EV3 might be a little bit of a tougher sell if they don't get to a lower price point, just because of the slower charging compared to EV6, which is already pretty cheap relatively speaking, and especially the lease deals and stuff still pretty solid. So um, I think I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with all those things, but I mean, if they can come to a Nissan Leaf price point, great. I think if that would work. But if they can't get to that, then yeah, don't even bother bringing it over. And I see Danny was rooting for the Blue Jays as well. And Patricia says the man is back. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks so much for stopping by again, Patricia, as well. And Theodore says, hope you and yours are having a great night, Matt. Keep up the amazing work you do. Thank you, Theodore. Appreciate that. I'm gonna keep on grinding it out here. And Steven or Sean says, I was rooting for the Blue Jays. They knocked the Yankees out of the playoffs in my hometown host. My hometown hosts their farm team, the Manchester Fisher Cats. Nice, but the Dodgers deserved it, and it was a great series. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was right down to Game 7 and extra innings. I mean, it sounded like it was a fun one to watch there, and yeah, I'm glad there's still people enjoying baseball, because it seemed like for a while there baseball was kind of teetering, and maybe it still is, but it's always been my favorite sport still. And yeah, I'm glad to see that there's some excitement for it. And Darnell says, saw pristine pink 56 Thunderbird today, had white wall tires with a pink accent stripe too. That's awesome. That's a great spot. Thanks for sharing, Darnell. And Chad says, I've been seeing more Slate commercials, including a Halloween one. Interesting. I haven't seen a single Slate commercial. That's cool. I don't know why they're advertising though, because you can't. I guess you can pre-order them, but you can't get it. It's not even coming out till what, like a year from now or something. But interesting. And let me see. Jazz says, thanks for the membership there from Lanswath. And Fanatic Guide says, that's how I feel with the Patriots and the Chiefs. I know it's football, but same concept of, that we were talking earlier about, the same team's always winning and how it kind of feels stale when that happens. Yeah, I totally agree. And honestly, even like with the Steelers there for a while, I mean, I was happy to see it, but again, I'm just like, I want everyone else to experience the fun too, and have it not just be one person hogging all the fun. And Jazz says, I was at the game in 1960 when Bill Mazeroski hit the ball over the head of Yogi Berra out of the park, home run, Game 7 against the Yankees. Wow, you were there. That's awesome, Jazz. That's very exciting. My dad would be very jealous to hear that you were there. He was, listening on the radio or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure you're aware, Jazz, if you've been to Pittsburgh, they still have this section of wall there in Oakland, right by, where Pitt kind of demolished the stadium and everything else that used to be there. But that wall and where he hit the ball over the wall there, that is still there. I think they actually just, on the anniversary of that home run, they had like a little gathering or something. But it's really cool to go there and just kind of touch the wall and check it out. They even have Forbes Field's home plate in one of the student buildings, I think now, one of the halls where they have classrooms or something, I think, is where you can go in and see where home plate is in its original position there. Yeah, it was I mean, I even enjoyed, the playoffs the Pirates were in back in the early 2010s there. I think it was 2012, 2013. I think it was even maybe 2014. Just so exciting. And so that was my little taste of some hometown baseball mania. And then it was unfortunately short-lived, but it's fun while it lasted. And one of those things, our terrible owner of the Pirates can't live forever. That's all I'm hoping. One of these days, he will have to relinquish power, and we can maybe have a chance again. Well, he currently is just bleeding them dry. But anyway, Ahmed, thanks for stopping by. He says, you guys have any advice for purchasing a used car on Facebook Marketplace? 2015 RC350 F Sport with 75,000 miles. I mean, the same as any other used car, really. Really check it out. Make sure you get, Carfax, maintenance records, anything you can do. I mean, whether you go to have a mechanic inspect it or, I mean, it comes down to how much due diligence you want to do. But at the very least, I'd, make sure you get a Carfax on it. Make sure, that you have some maintenance records and have a good idea of what's going on with the car. But a car like that, as long as it's had regular oil changes and done all the usual stuff, should be pretty solid, pretty reliable, and I wouldn't worry too much. Just know that Facebook Marketplace is a loud place, and you might have some jokers and crazy people on there, with fake listings and all that. So also just be wary of, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is, that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I don't know. I've never bought anything on Facebook Marketplace, I don't think. I've sold, I think I maybe sold one or two things a while back. It was a terrible experience. But yeah, just be wary, I guess. And Steven says, my dad test drove a 2026 Volvo EX30 single motor last week, and he also did test drive an Audi Q4 e-tron. He liked the Volvo, but wasn't sure about the Audi. Main reason, he said, it felt a bit maybe small inside. But yeah, EX30 is, it is a tight little car. That's one of the drawbacks for sure. Q4 actually would be a little more spacious, but I like the X30 a lot, and I haven't tried the Q4. And Chad says, is that person Yogi the Bear was based on? No, I don't believe so. Maybe someone else can weigh in, but I'm pretty sure Yogi the Bear was around before Yogi Bear was super common. Maybe not. Maybe that was around the same time, but I don't think it was the same. Yeah. I feel like there's a connection there in some way. I think it might be the Yogi Berra. I don't know if that's his actual name. Maybe he pulled that from the cartoon. I don't know. I feel like I knew something about that connection a long time ago, but it's since vanished from my brain. So maybe someone else can weigh in if they know. And Jazz says, Matt, do you or your family miss driving the Mach-E? No, I don't think we really do. The Lyric is better in every way, pretty much. And, I mean, it's the sentimental thing. Sometimes, our daughter will be like, hey, look, it's mommy's old car. Or, even Beth will say, oh, look, there's another one in, Space White or whatever. So there's some of that. But, it was a good car for us. So, we have fond memories of it. There's no, no upsetness or anything there. So, we look at it very fondly, but the Lyric's, a much better vehicle. I mean, again, not that Mach-E was bad, but just you have extra grip, you have better handling, you have more range, more power, more luxury. I mean, just more of everything really with the Lyric. OKS Basis says, good evening all, not a spot, but the opposite, a disappearance. An old closed up shop had a Daimler 250 sitting outside for a long time, and now it's gone. Would have loved to make them an offer on it. Oh man, that's too bad. And yeah, I mean, that's always a good thing to do, though. If it's something you want, never hurts to make an offer. You might have some idiot that, says, oh, I know what I have, and they don't want to sell it, and they want $1 million or whatever. But like, sometimes you never know. I know I follow some on Instagram. There's a couple of these like guys my age that are into classic cars, and they're just like, offering, they see something or whatever, and they just offer it, and it's, some old widow who doesn't care about the car anymore and just wants to get it out of there, and she sees some guys roll up with classic cars that clearly have a passion for this, that are going to take care of it, and the people say yeah sure, and they don't need to get top dollar. They don't know what top dollar is. They don't know what it's worth, honestly. And they it's not like these guys are going in and get it for dirt cheap, but like they give them a fair price and all that, but it's, it's able to, move on to a new owner. And it's one of those things you never know until you try, and never hurts to ask, right? So hopefully it turns back up though for you at some point there. Okay, it's basis, and you get another shot at it. And Lantern Tail says, Microsoft forced the Xbox division to deliver a 30% profit margin. This led to the division to get layoffs and cancel games that were not going to be profitable. Games are supposed to be passion projects, not huge money makers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, the cancer of, venture capital and all these, giant things where everything's got to be, a gigantic financial return. And I mean, any company is in the business to make money. Like that's, all that they care about. But like, you're right. Like there was a lot of times, and this goes for any kind of business thing where you could kind of say, okay, this isn't going to be the most profitable, but we're going to do it because it'll give us a boost in other ways, maybe intangible ways, but it's worth doing, or it's, just something we want to do or whatever. And now it's just like, yes, same thing with the cars. So many cars don't get approved, and it's, just all the safe stuff that's a guaranteed money maker. And it's like, yeah, no one wants to lose money, but like, sometimes again, some of these things have perks and halo effects and stuff that, and I think this is like, for example, like you might have people that, now if there aren't as many exclusive games on Xbox or any of these more niche titles, and it's just all the main stuff that you can get on all the other platforms anyway, like Madden or whatever, then it's like, well, why wouldn't you get the PS5 or whatever, So I think it's, yeah, doesn't seem like I'm not an expert on that either, but just seems, yeah, from my limited knowledge, it's a bad move. And hopefully it doesn't completely sanitize, the games that are available out there. I think there are still some, indie, places that do make some cool games and stuff. So I think we'll still see, hopefully that continue, but it's a shame. Yeah. Some of this stuff gets canceled. And Tastebud says, I saw a Mint Dodge Stealth today. That's a really, that, I don't know if, was that a factory color? That's interesting. Or maybe you're just meaning, sorry, brain fart. Just a really pristine Dodge Stealth today that was black with blacked out windows. Should have kept reading. And shiny chrome rims and chrome true dual exhaust. Looked and sounded so sick. That's nice. Actually, that triggers a memory. I did actually see a 3000 GT this week, and I haven't seen one of those in a while. So thank you for reminding me of that. So I do actually have a spot this week. Yeah. I don't know if it was a VR4 or not, but just any clean bone stock 3000 GT is very rare to see, so that was cool. But I'm glad you saw a Dodge Stealth. That's awesome. And yeah, it sounds like it was nicely done too. And Lantern Tail says, like every American company, even Microsoft is after huge profits for all their divisions. Yep. And Sean says, I've owned 3 Pontiacs, definitely never learned my lesson. 86 Trans Am, 93 Grand Am, and 06 G6. Nice. Well, hopefully, you enjoyed them enough to keep, buying from the brand there, and that's cool. Danny says, I heard that Mopar is going to tease a Hellcat variant. Yeah, so we just talked about that. And Danny says the 06 G6 GTP was a cool thing. Yeah, with the V6 and the 6-speed manual. Yeah, 240 horsepower and 241 pound-feet of torque. Yeah, back when that was like muscly and impressive, which is so funny too. And Luke says, when are we launching the slow speed limit diner? I know we were talking about that last week and joking around about a nearby road around here that's so slow with the speed limit. And yeah, I don't know, Luke, let me know when you're ready to get up and running. I will happily give you a shout out and be your first customer. But yeah, hopefully that happens someday. And let me see here. Also, Chad and Jordan, sorry I missed your super chats there. So Chad, thank you for a super chat. He says, what would you consider to be your favorite and most practical daily GR product? Maybe a 3-cylinder? Thanks for the live chats. Yeah, thanks so much, Chad. You know it. Yeah, GR Corolla is the way it goes. Have a nice drink on me, and thanks for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, when you look up Carfax, can you just use the VIN number? Yes, that's exactly what you do. You just put the VIN in, and you. I think that's the only way to look it up. So yeah. See, Lantern's excited about the drink as well. But yeah, and the VIN, for anyone who doesn't know how to find their VIN, if that's because I was listening to Sirius XM this past week or so, and they have that like morning talk show or whatever, which I don't ever like hardly listen to, but every once in a while it happens to be on, and I catch a couple of minutes of it. But like they were talking about how the one host, she had like a flat tire or something, and she was calling roadside assistance, and they asked her for her VIN, and she had no idea how to find her VIN number. And I'm like, I mean, I guess as a car person, that just sounds crazy to me, but I guess if you don't know anything about cars, that is a foreign concept. So public service announcement. If you need to know where your VIN number is, it's always at the base of your windshield. It's always going to be on a label on your door. So in case anyone was unclear of that, that is how you find your VIN. B. Mitchell says it doesn't count to bait me. I mean, it's in everyone basically baiting me whenever, we're bringing up stuff that's related to, that's GR Corolla adjacent. It's, everyone knows I can't resist a shout out for GR Corolla. So, Enjoy the drinks, everyone. And let me see here. So, um, where are we here? So, Anthony, thanks for stopping by. So, had a great weekend. Yeah, it was a good one. Hope you had a good one too, Anthony. And Chad says, I went down a rabbit hole with crash test videos. I realized how much the tires are affected on head-ons with a small overlap, especially. Do you think low profiles hurt survivability? I don't think tires honestly matter too much. I think, they because I mean, even the rim gets crushed in any of those kinds of impacts, and the tire just kind of flubs itself away. I mean, I'm sure you have a very minute amount of energy absorption that the rubber does, but I don't think that really helps. It's all about crash structure and how things deform, and how the rest of the car is engineered as far as survivability goes. Honestly, the best cars, well, not always, but a lot of the really well done stuff, like a lot of the Volvos, the way that they crash is like it just keeps going. Like the best ones, they like kind of are engineered to just kind of slip off of a small overlap and just basically keep cruising, versus a lot of these others, they have like a catch point or something, and that really then puts the pressure on the structure and on the airbags to do the brunt of the energy absorption, versus like the Volvos, like it feels like it just like bounced off the impact, and that little sliver of the car just kind of slices away and it just carries on its merry way. And it still obviously crashes, but like it that's the best way to disperse energy, is just like keep it away from you and keep moving instead of absorbing it all in the car. So I think the better that the tires and the wheels can get out of the way and just explode off to the side, the better. So yeah, I'm sure if there was a way the tires could help with that, that would be something companies look into. But I don't think that usually matters too much. So, I mean, you might have, they never really crash test anything with super wide tires. I'd have to think that, the super wide, like 305 wide fronts on some of these, high performance, Mustangs, Camaros, Challengers, stuff like that, there's a chance that maybe those would be a little bit worse, because you got then a really chunky meat of mass that probably isn't just being thrown off to the side and maybe ends up getting pushed up, into the footwell or the firewall, or things like that. And you might have a little bit of that, but we just don't know because they never crash test that stuff. And even the NHTSA, they're more simple crash tests. I don't think even their stuff tests the high performance variants. So I have no clue. But that would be the only thing I could say as far as wheels and tires affecting crash testing that I could speculate on. But great question, Chad. Thanks for asking. And I can't remember the name of the channel. There's a channel that uploads like old like NHTSA tests, and they did some weird stuff. Like they'll even post like the tests from like the Pinto and trying to figure out what it would take to explode the gas tank in the back and stuff like that. But they have like all this archival footage that I think they just got from like Freedom of Information Act kind of requests, where they said, hey, we want to see the government video on this crash test or whatever, and they just get it that way. If I think of the channel name, it's some not easy to remember name, but yeah, if you send me a message, Chad, if you're interested, I can send you the link. But yeah, it's interesting to see that stuff for me too. And Mr. 705 says, I'm 37 and being able to afford cheese every week is exciting, and RTR definitely isn't in my budget. That's very much relatable. Reading about all the impacts of the SNAP shortages here that kicked in yesterday, that I guess it sounds like it's going to be reinstated here in the next day or two, thankfully, hopefully. But like, yeah, and that's why I also don't want to be tone deaf either. Obviously, again, I'm sure many of you are doing very well for yourselves and a lot of money and all that, but yeah, I think the junkyard stuff is just more relatable, and it's you guys have always known. That's why I do the used car reviews. Like I have a passion for helping everyone and for trying to just be relatable, and I just have very little appetite for showing off some $1 million car. It's fun, but like for me, it's not my passion. I'll happily do it, but like if that's where the views are, but especially if the views aren't there, I'd much rather do stuff that's relatable. And you'll see another one of these examples. And if you remember, as you already saw the upload schedule for November here, but I got another great used bargain value here that I'll be posting, that I went out and I drove 4 hours round trip on Friday on Halloween. Made sure I got back in time to trick or treat, but drove 4 hours to go film this thing because it's one, a cool unicorn that you're not going to see very often, but two, it's such a phenomenal value on the used market. And that kind of stuff where it's like really cheap, like, well under $20,000, a lot of car for the money. It's not going to burn you. That's just, a really solid value. Like, I want to give that stuff, attention and show people like, hey, look, you can still get a really nice car for $18,000. And trying to just raise awareness. So that's so people don't feel the need to be like, oh, well, I guess I'll just go buy another $50,000 car like everybody else and get it over my head. Like I just, want to show people again, that there's other things out there that aren't crazy expensive. We got to buck this trend and stop buying these expensive cars. Although I'm part of the problem with our lyric lease, I suppose, but I'm doing my part, I guess, with a Fiat, trying to get something cheap and affordable and propping up the remnants of the subcompact car market here a little bit. But let me see. Maran says, also, Matt, I'm close to getting my Durango and I might get lucky and get the Hellcat version. Well, good luck with that. I hope it works out. He says, I finally get to customize the new Durango Hellcat jailbreak on their website. I'm so happy. Nice. Well, have fun with the configurator there and hope you can make it a reality someday soon. And Danny says, I forgot to mention this, but yesterday the Bolt rolled over 77,000 miles. The Go Gadget car is still trundling along happily. That's awesome. Happy it's doing well, and you got double sevens there. Lucky number for your mileage. And Luke says, I do not like the Malibu 1.5T CVT combo. Yeah, it's not great. And I think the biggest problem, I don't know if they've since fixed this, but whenever I reviewed that generation Malibu back in, I think it was 2016, the stop start was terrible. It was so slow. And there's just nothing redeeming about that car, really. I guess the size was pretty good. The space was one of the better ones when it first launched, but everyone else quickly fixed that. So I don't know, just nothing about the Malibu really made it worthwhile. And also, I'm sorry I missed the other activity going on here. So Chad, thanks so much for gifting a membership. I really appreciate that. And Lancelot, thanks so much for the very generous super chat. I really appreciate that as well. He says, you mean we aren't allowed to bait Matt? GR Corolla. Absolutely, bait as much as you want. It's I'm always happy to give it a shout out for sure. I hope everyone enjoys the drinks. B Mitchell's finally caving, I see. So it's Sunday night, right? You gotta I don't endorse drinking for everyone. Do what's best for you. And I know some of you maybe aren't even of age, but for everyone that is, if there's ever a time to drink, I feel like these are the days, in moderation, of course. But anyway, thanks so much, Lancelot, for the super chat. And let me see. Back to the other questions here. So Antonio says, hey, Matt, have you seen the Camry GTS concept? I'd like this. Yeah, sorry, I bit my tongue. I would like to see it all-wheel drive 6-cylinder turbo hybrid. Yeah, I was kind of hoping we'd see even like the Crown Platinum powertrain, that hybrid max thing you have in that, that's like 362 horsepower. That would have been cool to see. But yeah, 6-cylinder turbo hybrid. They have that combo in the Lexus TX. I don't know if it would fit in the Camry, but it's out there. And as far as the GTS, though, I think that's just, it's an easy kind of SEMA thing of showing the potential for Camry, and it's, as far as I know, I think that's just it's lowering springs, wheels, dress up kit, and that's about it, which is, the usual kind of thing. That's fine. But I'd love to see an actual, GR Sport. I think we'll see it, probably the same powertrain as, the GR Sport RAV4, but, yeah, it'd be fun to see them do more sporty stuff with Camry. And let me see. Lantern Tail says, I think Toyota is doing the long game. Toyota first launched the hybrid Camry in 2007. Over the next 3 generations, the technology got better and better. Once the technology has matured, then they went hybrid only. I think they're doing the same with the EVs. Yeah, and you're right. And I think that is yeah, that's the smart way to do it. I think, all these companies know, like, solid state is, coming eventually, and even just improved battery chemistries are, coming and all that. And so, yeah, it's one of those things. I think Toyota understands, like, hey, look, it's okay if we don't sell a ton of these, we sell a few, and battery technology gets better and better, and then yeah, eventually they will have it be the dominant thing, at least for countries where you have good infrastructure and everything. But yeah, I totally agree. That's a good way to look at it too, with how, looking back at how they progressed on hybrids all these years. Um, yeah, that's very true. And Antonio says, about to be a year with my 2025 Camry SE. Gas mileage is great and haven't had any issues with it. Enjoying the awesome MPGs. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it still. And yeah, glad it's treating you well. That's awesome. And Chad says, I saw an EV Blazer or Equinox, can't remember, on a Travel Channel show that Chevy lent the host. They're not car based, but loved it. And the features were people maybe were amazed by the charge port. That's funny with the power door. It's funny the things that impress people sometimes. But it's also hard to say, especially if they're given one, what they're actually saying that's legitimate and what they're saying that's a line that's fed to them, but yeah, it's they're great cars for especially long drives and stuff. Especially the Blazer is really nice and comfy. And let me see. That Tech Guy 95 says, looking at an Outback, go for the current gen or wait for the 2026. Also considering a lightly used two-door Bronco. Well, that's, a completely different kind of thing there. The Bronco is going to be rougher, obviously less practical, and just a lot more capable though. So it comes down to what your priorities are there. But as far as current gen Outback versus the new one, it's really going to come down to the styling, because powertrains are carryover, so there's no surprises there. I haven't driven it, but I'm assuming, again, it's going to be very slow without the turbo engine. With the turbo engine, if it's not going to have any tuning improvements, it's going to be the frustrating combo of a CVT with the turbo, which is very much a weird thing where you have a rubber bandy effect for the CVT, and then you wait for the turbo to kick in, then turbo kicks in, the CVT has to adjust itself, and it's a whole back and forth. It kind of irks me sometimes. You can get used to it, but I don't love it. So as far as powertrain goes, honestly, I'd say Bronco's better, but you have a rougher ride and all that stuff too. So also just keep in mind, 2026 Outback's going to be more expensive. Pricing's already been out, and it's a big leap there. So I don't know if it's confirmed. Maybe it was just rumored. I can't remember what the actual official thing was or not. But anyway, it sounds like it's gonna be a lot more expensive. Like I think it was $5,000 more if my memory serves me right. So if that doesn't matter to you, that's great. But if you don't care about the 2026 stuff that much, just get a 25, save yourself the money. Or better yet, go lightly used, or, I guess if you can get a better interest rate on the new, you can get a good discount on a 25, go for that. Broncos have gigantic discounts right now. So you might even be able to get a better deal on one of those new versus lightly used. I don't know, but lightly used is great too. But I need more context as far as what you are looking for, what your priorities are, to give you a better recommendation. I do still do car consulting, so I do one-on-one video calls here on my website. There's a link in the description for that. If you'd like to book a call, we could chat more about it. There's a quick one or there's a long one where we can really dig down deep, and you can give me all the context that you've got there. And I'm always happy to help people find a car they'll love. Vishal says, I didn't know there was a Daewoo wagon. The only reason I know of Daewoo is because of Saab Kyle and him making a video of the Lanos back in the day. Yeah, they had the other one there, and yeah, I covered it in the Junkyard Walk this past week. So check that out if you're interested. But yeah, it was I couldn't believe I saw it in the yard. It was so rare. And Mr. 705 says the junkyard video this week was good. I like putting it on while I'm making/eating dinner, just like I used to with your weekly updates. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying them that way. And yeah, and I know lots of people are still missing the weekly updates. And I was debating. I was too busy this week to fit it in. I should have probably made a video on the new STI thing that came out of Tokyo. Both of them really, but especially the hatch one, which I don't know if you guys saw that. But brief little aside here to talk about car news for a minute. Subaru did come out with the electric with a Performance B or B. There's the B Performance, which was the gas one, and there's the E Performance, which was the electric one. The electric one, I think, is a very, obviously it's very concepty still, but a look at kind of what they're thinking a little bit for probably the actual next generation STI, which they said way back when was probably coming in 2028 and it was going to be, the way forward for STI most likely. But then we had this other curveball with this B Performance thing, which is basically putting STI stuff into the Impreza hatch, which was a weird move for a couple of reasons. First, the whole thing with WRX and by extension WRX STI is that it's its own car now. And they said, oh, it's not Impreza WRX, and it's not, it's this whole separate thing. And we see this with WRX. WRX is not an Impreza. It's bigger. And it's not a legacy, obviously. It's its own thing. And so a WRX STI, we all just assumed it was going to be a sedan. Because there's no other WRX. And then now it's like it's on an Impreza. As far as the hatch goes, at least. I mean, they can just slap WRX badges on it, I suppose, but like it's not the same. So I don't even know how to take that car. It's also, I mean, we're only in the third model year for Impreza, hatch. But typically I feel like we were a little late for that if they were actually going to put that into production. Because I would assume we probably have another 3 years maybe for that body style. And then, they'll update it when they update, Crosstrek and all that. So I just don't know what to make of that thing. I mean, obviously it looks very production ready, but again, just like that's all well and good. But like, again, now, that I've been around so many of these car companies and, hearing more of their rationale and, the restrictions the brands have for things they can and can't do and all this stuff, just like, just backtracking on the WRX thing and then just like slapping all this stuff on an Impreza just seems weird. And also, like, if you want to have it on a hatch, just put it on the Lavorg. But they didn't do that either. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that thing, but yeah. So I was thinking about making a video about that, but it just didn't have the time. But that would have been probably a good video because I'm sure many of you and many others, are interested in what I think about WRXs and all that. So, but I think I've kind of missed the boat at this point. So, but if you were curious of my thoughts on that, and we're missing a weekly update where I would be going off on that, there you go. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that here in the comments as well. But let me see. Also, Raphael says, I realize I'm not old enough to not worry about the new car direction. Or I realize I'm old enough to not to worry about the new car direction. Just used cars from here on for me is fine. Yeah, and I think that's, even back when everyone was freaking out about Charger and all this other stuff, that I kind of was saying something to the same effect of like, there's all these used cars. We have so many awesome used cars that are exactly what everyone loves. Just enjoy that stuff instead of being mad about the new stuff and mad about progress. Like, just, let those who are interested in the progress have the progress. And otherwise, if you like the old stuff, stay with the old stuff, and no one's taking away your old car, enjoy it. And, yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the way to do it. And that's even, whenever people say, oh, I really, want a new version of a Prelude, but I don't like the new Prelude. Well, it's like, well, then just go buy an old Prelude or, buy an old whatever, because it's never going to be better than the original. Same thing, people beg for a new S2000. It's going to be $70,000. It's going to be heavier. It's going to be more complicated. And it's not going to be what you actually want. What you actually want is an old S2000. So you just go buy an old S2000, pay whatever the price is. I know they're expensive these days, but it's still going to be cheaper than a new one. And it's probably going to appreciate still. So just go buy an old one and enjoy it. And then you're happy instead of, begging for a new one all the time. I know, again, some people do, want the new safety features and all this other stuff. But like, for people who don't care about safety, especially, like, just go buy the old one of anything that you're, seeking or upset about or whatever the case is. And then you're good. That's the great thing. There's lots of parts. You can keep them running forever. You can, as long as it's not some super rare car, there's nothing stopping you from just driving the wheels off it and enjoying it to the max and then refurbishing it and, going for another million miles or whatever you want to do, you know? So, um, yeah, I don't know why that's never a good answer for people, but like this, so many people just don't seem like they want to do that, but they just don't want things to change either. And it's like the best way to not have change in your car is to not change your car. Just buy the old one and stick with it. But anyway, V Mitchell says my two favorite baseball teams are the Twins and whoever is playing against the Yankees. Nice. I'm glad there's some other Yankee opposition here. No offense to anyone who's a Yankees fan, but it's funny. And Jordan says TFL posted a video of a new Corolla concept. The front end looks like a Kia EV6 striped lights across the front and across the front end. They're hideous. I actually think the new Corolla looks pretty cool. And yeah, it's just a concept for now, but it sounds like it's a hint at the next design direction for Corolla and for Toyota in general. I think kind of the first evolution of this BZ look that we've had with Prius and stuff for a while. Yeah, I'm actually, I mean, looks a lot more exciting than the current car. So I'm into it, but we'll see what the actual watered down production version looks like. And Lantern Tail says you should track down your Mini Cooper and do a junkyard walk around with it. Yeah, I think that car is probably crushed already and turned into a refrigerator at this point. Because when I discovered that it had been, taken to the junkyard, which is another junkyard I don't even visit, I don't think. But when that happened, I mean, that was what I think, I can't remember when I did that video, probably 2023, maybe. I mean, usually like with these yards, they turn over vehicles every I think it's 60 days, they said. Sorry, I'm yawning here. It's been a been a long day here. But so that's why I was able to go back to the Pittsburgh yard here this past week. Because it's been about 2 months since I was back there. And now basically all the cars were fresh, new cars and stuff I hadn't seen before. So junkyards typically don't keep stuff very long because they're always getting new stuff in. They can't afford to just hold stuff. So, especially if it gets stripped through pretty fast, there's no point in, holding a shell. You might as well just, going through it in the crusher. So yeah, if you see a car that's hit the junkyard or you see like a car in one of my videos and you want to I'd like to go get some parts off that or something, you got to move fast. Like you got to get it, in the following few weeks after the video. If you're more than a month away from when that video is posted, that car there's a decent chance it's already crushed. So that's the way it goes. There's at least the pull apart ones. So, some others, do maybe keep stuff around longer or don't crush stuff and just collect stuff, but that's kind of a different business than what pull apart does, with them. And I think also wherever that Mini ended up was another one of those large, like salvage wrecker kind of places. So yeah, it'd be fun. I still, because that and I'd love to find my first car, but I think that also probably has been crushed at this point because that got a salvage title probably 18 years ago or something. And but yeah, if I'm always gonna keep an eye out for the other stuff though. I needed to do a new Carfax video though to run another Carfax and everything. It has been probably at least 2 years now, and I'm curious. The one I'm worried about now is the Legacy, because the Legacy I lost track of. I used to know the previous owner. So I sold it to a guy. He kept it for a few years, and he sold it to another girl who was in Florida, and she loved it and took really good care of it and upgraded stuff and took care of the maintenance stuff and everything. And then she lost it somehow in a relationship breakup. So I have no clue now. And I don't want to ask her about her ex's now car that somehow he got from her. So I have no eyes on the Legacy anymore. So that makes me concerned, because that one, of all the cars I've ever owned, the Legacy is the one that I've put the most miles on. That was the rarest car, and it was the first car I ever actually bought. The Outback Sport that I had was a hand-me-down, and I was very fortunate to have that. But that didn't bond with me the way that first car that you buy yourself and you put your own money into and you really are working hard for. That's the one that I have the biggest bond with, I think, still, even all these years later, even with the BRZ and everything else. which I need to catch up on the BRZ because it's briefly talked with, I think, the owner of it a couple of years ago. And they were like trying to sell it back to me or like something. I'm like, I don't have the money to like buy this back. I just was curious how it's doing. And I know that one had gone through it was on its second motor, and I don't know what else happened, but I should probably follow up on that. That might be a good video over the winter time to do. But yeah, I'd love to track down and stuff like that. And especially if it ends up in a junkyard, try and get there and maybe get a memento off of it before it kind of gets crushed. And Fook says your live streams every week are a few things left about cars that I'm still excited for these days. Please don't stop doing them. Well, I'm glad you like them, Fook. Thanks for tuning in every week. And yeah, I love these live streams. They're fun to do. They're easy to do. And as long as you guys still enjoy them, I'll keep doing them. Fook says also, it feels surreal adjusting the clock back 100 years in 1 hour, 1 hour last night, still adjusting my sleep. I appreciate that, Fook. Yeah, it's actually, I haven't heard anyone make that joke yet in the past 24 hours. You're the first person, but yeah, we're doing both. We're doing the 1 hour thing. We're doing the 100 years thing this year. So yeah, complete with great Gatsby parties, apparently, if any of you follow the news. So the roaring 20s for the top 1%, and that's about it. But anyway, moving on here. Where were we here? My scroller thing is locking up here on the comments. So let me see. Where were we here? So Will from San Diego, thanks for stopping by. And Danny says the Volvo 940 wagon is a literal tank. Yeah, they are definitely awesome old wagons. And B. Mitchell's got a bit of VIN trivia here. The 68 Ford is the only North American car to have the VIN posted on the passenger side base of the windshield. The idea was that a beat cop / meter maid could see it. Interesting. I never knew that. Thanks for the fun factoid, B. Mitchell. And let me see. Also, I think let me see. Yeah, Hyper Shadow, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, Mateus Marinelius, thou art sleepy. I am too, and everyone else around me has been also. It's been a long day for us all. Get some good rest tonight. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for the super chat. Yeah, I think it's just the time change maybe, and now it's getting darker earlier because of the time change. And just I don't know about you guys, but fall, it's just always like you just want to sleep, I'm also probably just me just being insanely overworked and all that, but I'm just like, all I want to do is sleep. But the show must go on. And let me see here. I don't know why my scroller is locking up here with the comments. Hopefully you guys can see comments okay still, and it's not just, hopefully it's just me. Let me see. So Lantern Tail says, an interesting fact about Saabs was they were so safe that a roll cage wasn't needed when rallying. The roll cage was only there as an admission requirement. Interesting. Yeah, I think I heard that about Saab. I thought, didn't Volvo do that, have that same thing too? I don't know, but yeah, Saabs are great, and it's a shame they couldn't make it here in the States or anywhere anymore. And Danny says, when the IHS does their crash test, they buy the base model of the cars basically. They just buy whatever they can. A lot of times it's actually not a base model I've seen. Sometimes it is. It just comes down to, I guess, what they can grab, and I don't know what their logic is as far as how they buy cars. But yes, they do buy them themselves. It helps that they're funded by the insurance, agencies. That gives them a lot of money to work with, which is what you need for proper testing of this stuff. You don't want to be taking a manufacturer car that might have been, messed with or something. You want to just buy off the lot and, be a secret shopper and, have a car that's a true representation and do this test. And Jordan says, is there a variance in airbag deployment injuries based on seating position? Shorter people sitting closer to the wheel. I don't know all the signs on that, but I think that, these airbags are a little smarter and they can sense and adjust the deployment slightly. But yes, there is an extra danger to sitting close to the steering wheel for sure. And there's some things they just don't, they can't factor in. For example, this is why it's a bad idea to drive like Dominic Toretto with your hand right at the top of the wheel. I actually learned this in driver's ed when I was 16. But I mean, because that airbag goes off, if you're in that position, you're punching yourself in the nose. And fast with an airbag deployment. So like, there's those types of things where like the airbag, can't really, figure that out and help you out. So, but yes, I believe there is an extra risk of sitting super close to the wheel, which is why it's not advised. And this is also, all the other things that you see people do that are just insane. Like every time, Beth and I are driving around and we see someone on the passenger side with their feet up on the dash, it's like you were just begging for a shattered pelvis. Like it's so bad to have your feet up on the dash, unless your car doesn't have an airbag. Even then, it's still debatable. But like having your feet hanging out on an airbag is not what you want to be doing. And the amount of people that do that all the time, I see people all the time have their feet up on the dash. It's like, man, not a good move. Anyway, so where were we here? Lantern says if Matt was cast as Batman, he would have a modded GR Corolla as the Batmobile. Toyota would pay anything for that. Yeah, if the Batmobile called for something relatable and fun, absolutely, all black. The GR Corolla does look very good in black, actually. I'm not usually a fan of black cars typically, just because they're so hard to keep clean. And I'd rather have the red for the GR Corolla for sure. But if I couldn't get red, the black would probably be a cool color for it. Luke says the Malibu is a 2024. And yeah, stop start's rough. Visibility is bad, but I'll admit smooth ride quality. Every time I get in, I have to manually select Android Auto. It won't pair automatically. Interesting. That's kind of strange. And thanks for all the love there with the emojis again, everyone. Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know why Android Auto would be acting weird like that. See, Hypershad is happy about the GR Corolla thing. Danny says the Malibu hybrid was a good idea. GM kind of screwed up when they got rid of that. Could have been a good Camry competitor. Yeah, I don't know why the GM got rid of all these good hybrids. I mean, even the Volt was so fantastic, and everyone loves them. And it was just that idea was a little bit too early. But like, that's another car that they should have figured out. Hey, look, we shouldn't have gotten rid of this, and then eventually made a new generation, which would have been on sale by now, and they just never did. So, yeah, it's kind of a strange choice there. Why they've abandoned so many good ideas at GM, and then insisted on other bad decisions like lack of CarPlay and Android Auto instead. It's really strange sometimes. But let me see. Danny says 182 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque with the eCVT. Not a bad idea. Yeah, for the Malibu there. All right, I think we're back. For some reason, I think my Google Chrome actually just crashed on me. I don't know if you guys are still here. It looks like we was able to just reconnect the stream. I see some hearts, so hopefully we're back. I don't know. Yeah, hopefully everything's still good. Looks like I still have people here hanging out watching. Hopefully everything's working. Yeah, Luke says not too long of a gap. Okay, sweet. It was only a quick blip. Awesome. I'm glad that actually worked. I didn't know that would actually just reconnect so seamlessly, so that's good. Sweet. And Jordan, thank you so much for super chat. He says, Apple couldn't. Should Android produce a car? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because Android is kind of, just software. They don't really make physical stuff a whole lot anymore, really, right? I don't know. So I think it would be even harder than Apple, and I think they have less money than Apple probably. So I don't know. I think, especially now with the Chinese cars coming in and that being so far advanced, I don't see any really new competitors coming in that'll actually have a good chance of survival against the Chinese stuff in other parts of the world where the Chinese stuff is available. And for America here, it's, I think, not enough of a return just to sell it here. Stuff like Slate, I'm optimistic for, but, anything else that's just like a normal EV, I don't think, there's really anything. I think Android also doesn't need to because they have Android Automotive in, so many cars these days, like the GM stuff. You have the infotainment system there.
I don't think most software companies really care about the nuts and bolts around their software. They don't care what it's installed in, as long as it's their software. To them, that's the experience, that's the user interaction part that they care about. And so I think for them, it's just about getting into all the automakers. That's far easier than starting from scratch, getting a car built yourself. That's a whole lot more. I think so. I think why they probably won't bother. But thank you so much again, George, for the super chat. And see, Fuchs says, I hope that Android cars have Windows. Right. And let me see here. Where are we? So let me see. So Lantern also says, do you guys remember the Dodge Nitro? I saw them everywhere 13 to 15 years ago. We'll probably see one on the junkyard somewhere. Yeah, they're in the junkyard for sure. I just don't bother filming them because they're not very notable. Not worth giving any airtime to. But I remember when those things were, I think that was the $100 lease that they had for a while on some of those, where they were just giving them away in the middle of the recession because they just couldn't get rid of them. People didn't want them. And they sound like they're not super reliable either, just not very well made. So there's a lot in the junkyard, and there will probably continue to be lots more. If they haven't already aged out, they will probably happen to end up aging out here very, very soon. Because no appreciation for that vehicle, I don't think. And Chad says, do you think the Kia Soul is something to look at as an appliance vehicle? With them going out of production, I'm sure they've got good deals and many spare parts for you to find on the channel. I mean, Kia Soul is a great little vehicle. I've always appreciated them. Tons of space for very little money. I think it's a great, especially if you can get one with that 10-year powertrain warranty, then you don't have to worry about maintenance costs or anything like that. I think Kia Soul, should be a pretty solid choice. I haven't lived with one, but it seems like people are really happy with them. Actually, one of my good friends, his mom is on her second one, I think, and really loves them. And Kia Soul seems like a great little vehicle there. And Hyper Shadow says, if you had to choose between a current RS3 and a final model TLX Type S, considering luxury, speed, ride comfort, amenities, road presence, style, etc., which would you like overall? That's a tough one. Because from a car and amenities standpoint, I would be inclined to go for TLX, just because you have cooled seats, you have, I believe, massage right in those. You have a better stereo, in my opinion, in the TLX. And, not a ton more space, but, a little bit more back seat space, a little more trunk space, a little bit more of a, more substantial kind of car. But as good as the TLX Type S is, it doesn't drive as well as the RS3. The RS3 is just more fun. So, I guess it depends on how many other people you bring along regularly. If it's just you driving your car by yourself the large majority of the time, and you don't need to have a ton of space in the back or a trunk or whatever, I'd probably still go RS3. But personally, if it was me, RS3 just is a little small for me to live with as a daily, if it's going to be the car that I'm like driving the family around in a lot. I mean, obviously with my situation, I can get away with it because we'll just take the Lyric if we ever, need to have a bunch of space. But so I'd probably go RS3. But if I was, just needing to drive it all the time and always have, a little bit more space and a little more comfort, because it is more comfortable than the RS3, then the TLX Type S is great for that too. I think, though, the reality is they're not quite even as far as price goes. On paper, I suppose new versus new, they're pretty close. But when you're talking actual average transaction prices and the openness to buy, if you're open to buying used, I mean, RS3s don't depreciate a whole lot. They do a little bit, but TLX Type S does seem to depreciate a little bit quicker. So in reality, you'll probably save yourself a good bit of money going for the Acura as well. And that's another reason I think why I'd probably be pulled towards that, even though the RS3 is the more fun experience. Also, he says, can you really feel the difference between 4.5 and 3.5 seconds in a 0 to 60? I asked that because I know the TLX IPS is around 4.5 and RS3 is around 3.5. I mean, personally, yes, I can feel a difference between those two. I mean, 4.5 seconds is very quick, but 3.5 is, there's a real step up there in acceleration and G forces and stuff. So yes, I personally, yeah, I would notice that difference. And it is a big difference, especially if you're launching RS3. I mean, it pulls hard. It's very impressive. TLX is great too, but it's, you know, it's a little bit more relaxed. So, but yeah, I think that's about where I land on that. Hopefully it helps you a little bit there. Hyper Shadow. And Raphael says, that was well said. Don't be mad at new stuff. Just get an older one that you like. Yep, absolutely. I'm glad you agree, Raphael. And Chad says, safety features are overrated. A lady almost killed me crossing a solid line with tons of reflectors on the lines. I could see her mirror flashing when I honked. She never even looked. Yeah, I mean, there's some people you're never going to be able to help them no matter what you do. And this is why I love automatic emergency braking, because even the most inattentive, you know, checked out drivers, the car is going to brake automatically, at least in that instance. Obviously, not when we're talking about, you know, up at speed, crossing over lines and stuff, but at least as far as, I mean, rear-ending accidents have been way down as a result of, you know, that basically mandated, you know, it was just an agreement. No one was forced into it, but everyone agreed, like, hey, we're going to do automatic emergency braking across the board. And they did. And now, you know, anytime I'm driving and there's someone behind me, even if they're tailgating or they're getting close, like if I know it's a newer car, you know, 2017 or so or newer, I'll know, like, okay, you know, the car is going to kind of help me out here, even if the driver is not, you know, and it's a nice thing to know, in my opinion. B. Mitchell said your Mini probably got turned into your refrigerator that died last year. Oh, you remember that? Yes, maybe that'd be amazing if that actually was the way it worked out. I guess there's no way you can really like do that feasibly, but it'd be really fun to say, like, yes, I'm getting rid of this car, but I'm sad about it. And like pick your recycler or something and like have them turn it into something that you then go and buy. Like if there's a way to control that and say, okay, this batch that's going into the crusher is going to this place, and we're going to send it here so that it can be turned into whatever. That'd be really cool. But it's kind of fun to think about. Maybe it's weird. This is just me, but like it's kind of fun to think about, like anything recycled you get, especially metal. It's like, what did this used to be? Was this like part of a really cool old Corvette that got crushed or something? You know, you just like never know. So yeah, it's kind of fun. But we can just pretend it's the Mini. Although I hope it's not the Mini, because if that's the case, it'll probably be pretty unreliable, and I don't want that for my fridge this time. And Jordan says, do you think we will ever get a Netflix HBO Prime documentary on Stanley Meyer? He was on the verge of releasing a full H2O powered car, and he died of apparent poisoning. I'm sure maybe someone will. Any of those kind of conspiracy things that keep getting traction on YouTube and stuff are probably good, you know, a good thing to turn into a documentary if it seems like there is interest still there. I've looked into that stuff of, you know, water cars and stuff like that. I'm not convinced that was actually a viable thing. You know, as far as his death, I don't know about that either, but you know, I don't think the idea of a water car is a viable thing. At least not in the meantime. You know, obviously we had steam stuff, and they even played around with that, you know, 100 years ago, the idea of steam cars. And I just know there's a lot of really smart engineers and a lot of the brilliantest minds in the automotive world that are working on, you know, hydrogen, or working on, you know, the electrification and all that. And I can't imagine that those types of people, you know, if there was some merit to this stuff, wouldn't have just continued to like just support that and grow that. And that would have been something that, even if this guy didn't come up with it his way, you know, just like other engineers would have eventually arrived at, hey, this is the best way to do things. A prime example of this, not as exciting, but like 2-liter turbocharged 4 cylinders. Like everyone kind of figured out eventually, like, hey, this is just like the most efficient motor and like the best packaging for a regular 4-cylinder is to do 2 liters. And everyone kind of copied each other's notes, but everyone's kind of agreed, like, okay, and this is why now like everything is powered by a 2-liter turbo 4, because they all agree, like, oh wait, like this is the best way to do things. Let's all do the same thing, even if we're not talking about it, or we're not collaborating on it. We're just like, the whole scientific community is arriving on, like, this is the best displacement for this kind of an engine we're needing for these kinds of targets we're trying to hit or whatever. And so in the same way, I feel like if this person had figured something out there, others would have looked into it and reverse engineered it, done other things, to make it happen if it was a great idea. So it's also, water, even if you're talking, I guess if you're talking salt water, it might be less of a worry, but like, having something powered by water is a slippery slope, because if you're pulling a ton of water out of the environment, that has domino effects too. So there's that component of it as well. And which also might be part of why maybe it's something that even does potentially work, but it's like, yes, it works, but we're also draining our oceans. And what is that going to do, and how is that going to mess with the weather or whatever the case is, so like there might be some of that, as well, as far as why that never actually came to fruition. But, I'm just a little hesitant to just go along with the whole, conspiracy of, oh, well, they wanted to keep it out of the masses and, all those kinds of typical things you see with those kinds of conspiracies. I'm not convinced of those types of things, because again, whenever I take a step back, I'm like, what was so special about this guy that he figured out that no one else could have? There's very few things in the engineering world where you can't reverse engineer something and make your own version of it. And everyone's been trying to do the machines that are the infinite energy and all that kind of stuff, and it's just, there's no possible way to do it, because it's just, you always end up running into the laws of physics and things that hold you back there. But Mr. 705 also says, I like the live streams because I don't have many friends to talk cars with. Well, yeah, I mean, even me, I don't get out to Cars and Coffee anymore. I don't, I'm all just, inundated with doing videos and, hanging out with the family. That's pretty much it. So like, my car talk is this, and then when I go on the media drives and I get to chat with the other YouTubers and journalists and stuff, but that's it. Yeah, so I'm the same way. That's why I really love doing these too, because it's kind of filling the void of the Cars and Coffees that I don't go to anymore. And let me see here. So I got about 8 more minutes. So the last few questions. Oh, sorry, I missed the other couple super chats here. So Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says Kia Niro and Hyundai Ioniq, both compliance cars. No, I think that they were, again, I don't really know. I mean, I guess there was some stuff that might be compliance, but like, no, like these were cars that, they believed in, that they, sold pretty good numbers on and stuff. And I don't feel like that was a compliance kind of situation. I think it was just, them making the baby steps of trying to establish these brands. And also like with the Niro, especially, like that's a car that's sold elsewhere in the world. And it was just like, well, why not bring it here? So they did, and Raphael, thank you so much for super chat as well. He says, of the two, I'd pick the TLX. I love the RS3 for that engine, but I'll never push either to the limit. And the TLX is far more comfy. Yeah, that's a very valid point. And TLX has got a lot of great things going for it. So I'd be a little bit less worried about owning a TLX Type S for the long term versus the Audi 2. So that's not nothing either, And let me see. Maran says, I forgot to mention, I saw all your new RAV4 videos all the way through. And to be honest, it's actually grown on me. I usually only like the Sequoia. Well, thanks for watching them all the way through. I really appreciate that. That really does help the videos in the channel. So thank you for that. And I'm glad you like the RAV4 videos and the RAV4. You should take one for a test drive if you can, whenever they hit the dealers here in December, and see what you think about it. It's very nice. I mean, it's just a RAV4, nothing crazy, but they did a good job on it. And let me see here. So Jordan says Nikola Tesla was on the verge of free energy. Stanley Meyer was on the verge of water-powered cars. Both died. It would have killed corporate and government institutions, oil, gas, etc. Yeah, to me, there are still ways to monetize that stuff and restrict things so that everyone still gets their cut if that's what they're worried about. The Nikola Tesla stuff is interesting. I think that it's been a long time since I've read into that, but I think there was more at play than just free energy there with Nikola Tesla. I feel like there was some other things going on there, just as far as he had some really interesting stuff that he was working on. The free energy stuff was cool, but also just like portals and just all kinds of at least things he had plans for. I mean, who knows if any of this stuff actually worked, but like I think he was really on the verge of cracking whatever the secrets are to wormholes and all this kind of stuff. I think that's the kind of stuff that he I think figured out possibly. The free energy thing certainly would have been a nice perk as well. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do more research. It's been a while. If I ever have some free time, I want to look into that kind of stuff again because it's fun to research for sure. And Chad says, thanks again for another great chat. I won't be home Wednesday, so I appreciate the lives we can be here for. The others are a podcast. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're able to make this one. And we'll be doing another one here on Wednesday. And I see we've had some of the comments and stuff are drying up here, so we can head out a few minutes early if you guys are up for it. See Hyper Shadow has a super chat here. He says tonight's a good night to fall asleep to the N64 OSTs. Nice. I need to play it. We actually do have an N64 and I do have GoldenEye. So I need to pull that out someday, and that could be another fun thing to stream here if we ever do any gaming streams on here at some point in the future. But hope you enjoy your fun sleep. I wonder if that like triggers a fun dream about like playing N64, because that'd be cool if you can just kind of trick your brain into having video game dreams. That'd be fun. But anyway, all right. Well, yeah, I think we're good to head out here a couple minutes early, but I hope you guys have a great week. And stay tuned for some great videos. Like I said, if you're a member, you've already seen the member schedule, so you know what to expect there. And I'm hoping to do another junkyard thing and maybe get that posted here about this time next week. We'll see. But anyway, thank you all so much once again for your support. Have a great first week of November here. Stay warm, stay happy, healthy, and hope we all continue to do well, and everyone stays fed and warm and all that, and hope things continue to be okay for everyone. So anyway, thank you all so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.